cement our kids, you see. So thanks. We'll be here in Kuma.
Good day, Sakina. It's Chris in Durban. It's quite interesting to see that most political parties are waking up to the need to demand more accountability. This is what has been lacking for the past 30 years, and now we need more. I hope that there's unity in that demand, as that is what the government of the people, by the people, for the people expect. That's the only thing we want, accountability. Thanks.
Yesterday, there's a guy who sent a voice note speaking about the disability, the thing of 7.1% to all the government entity job opportunity. Says Sakina, we've been fighting this for a decade. This thing, I don't know, is just our government to campaign for the ANC. This thing is not working. They say lots of things about disability, but there's no such a thing. I want to be honest with you. There's no such a thing. Things are tough if you're a disability in South Africa. You are at your own. They don't care, those guys. They recognize only us when it comes to the election. When they make a special vote for us, it is only our government done something for disability. And they say lots of things about disability, but there's no such a thing.
Sakina and Sita, wow, this is JCK Kaunda from Sina. Sakina, it boggles the mind to find out today, Hori, we still cry racism after 30 years into power and having political power. What did we do with our political power? It can't be, truly speaking. If the ANC was doing her job right first time, one can ask what was the objective of the formation of the ANC. What does the Freedom Charter say? Crooks were busy looting and forgot their mandate. Ah, man. Let me rest my case for now. JZK, Kaunda from Musina.
Good afternoon, Sister Sakina, Friday Tracker. Sister Sakina, I would like to see that tree that grew in a pothole. Where is that? Do you know about that tree that grew up in a pothole? Icon, this mayor icon, something is not adding up for this mayor icon.
Oh, thank you so much for all of those voice notes. And yeah, it's an interesting one because the mayor said someone had sent him that. So alerting him to the fact that there was a tree that had grown where this pothole was. I'm not sure. I don't know where that was. But Bonisi says, Sakina, listening to you and Ike, how about we get a collaboration? I enjoyed the interview. Thanks so much, Mponisi. Yeah, I'll send it to Ike. I'll send it to the powers that be, and we'll see. But thanks so much for those messages. If we have more time, we'll come back to them.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Now, the Democratic Alliance says that President Cyril Ramaphosa unintentionally violated the Electoral Code of Conduct when he addressed the country as head of state shortly before the May 29th provincial and national elections. The matter is currently being heard by the Electoral Court, despite the DA's contention that it tried to reach an out-of-court settlement with the presidency. Now, legal counsel for the DA, Advocate Anthony Stein, says that the address by Ramaphosa was an abuse of a state institution for party political purposes. And here's a snippet of how the points were deliberated on in court.
And it's in that spirit that we approach the court as a referee in a dispute, can I say, as family members, in the words of the president, and particularly now as family members. You are the referees. We were playing a game, and we say the president was offside when he kicked the ball. He may not have intended to be offside, our footballers seldom are, but he was offside on a proper interpretation of the rules.
Well, if the test is objective, what a reasonable bystander would interpret the president's speech.
Indeed. So it's not a question of did he intend. We don't seek to go behind the president's say-so that he did not intend. But his words were received, and this court will decide whether a reasonable observer may have interpreted it in the way that we say it is, and that is to transgress the provisions of the code. Because even if you didn't mean your conduct or your words, in this case, your act to breach the electoral code, even if you didn't set out to do it, if the way that they were received was to influence, reasonably cause influence, or to have used public funds, then that is sufficient to meet the purpose of the Act. So it should be an objective test, not a... So not only do we say that the authority is that it is an objective test, but that it is properly an objective test.
I see my colleague on my left has got a question for you.
Yes, indeed.
Just two things. I mean, one doesn't unintentionally use public funds. So I don't think that you can conflate
yes,
the two.
As I was making the submission, it occurred to me that, well, having said that, and I don't mean to get into an obtuse argument, but you could perhaps do so. You could give an address which is funded, to use this example, funded as president. You didn't mean to use them for campaigning, but because you campaigned, in effect, you didn't intend to use the funds for that purpose. You intended to give an address.
So you're saying essentially that if in the course of doing my ordinary job as president, it has the effect of campaigning, then I must be held liable.
Yes, if the reasonable...
And I can't do my ordinary job as president if it's going to have that effect of campaigning. I must double think every step if it's within an electoral period before I can do my ordinary job as president, to make sure it can't be seen by anybody as campaigning.
I would stop short of putting it as strongly as your ladyship has put it to me now. You must take every effort to abide by the code, and that includes this provision of the code. If you are in breach of the code, then even if it was not deliberate, then so be it. Then you were in breach of the code.
But that's why we have to interrogate how far the reasonableness goes, and how far the unintended action, the intention is necessary. Because if the president was literally doing what he would ordinarily have done as part of his job as president, and it also fitted in with what someone who was the head of another party, if they had done it, it was campaigning. Does that mean the president must not do it now because it is election season?
In his guise as the president,
Yeah.
He may do it in his guise as president of his party. Some parties have only leaders, not presidents. He may do it in another guise, but in his guise as president, he may not do it.
So if for the last 4-5 years he's been doing a thing. He's been doing a thing. He's entitled to do it as president until the election was proclaimed on the something of February. So he's entitled to do it until the day before that as president. And the moment the election is proclaimed, he must stop doing it as president.
That may be so, my lady, because that is why the code applies to an electoral period. There are special considerations.
Yeah, it seems problematic.
And that was just a snippet of the proceedings at the Electoral Court, where the Democratic Alliance has accused President Cyril Ramaphosa of abusing his state funds to campaign for the ANC.
Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Purchase 2 or more tires at participating dealers and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand worth of Samsung products ranging from phones, tablets and TVs. Enter now at bridgestone.co.za. T's and C's apply. Bridgestone. Prepare to perform.
Attention ladies, join us on Saturday, August 17th, 2024 for the Star Choice is Yours Women's Day event at Altitude Fourways, a day dedicated to empowerment, inspiration and transformation. Engage with dynamic speakers, attend interactive conversations and connect with amazing women just like you. The event will be hosted by the fabulous Unatingai. Don't miss out on this opportunity to celebrate and elevate yourself. Get your tickets now at www.quicket.co.za for 550 Rand, drinks, food and a gift bag included. Plus, stand a chance to win an honor product. This incredible event is powered by independent media and the Honor 200 series.
Okay, so what do we have here? A new dubbed telenovela on S3? The last one was absolutely amazing, so let's see what this one's about. Paloma, a seamstress and single mother, receives the wrong test results and finds out that she only has 6 months to live. Interesting. She decides to live her best life and do things that she never had the courage to do. Understandable. Paloma unexpectedly finds love from a stranger she slept with. I see. She finds out that she received the wrong results and decides to meet the man who actually has 6 months to live? Wait, what? And right there, I know I'm hooked. Channel your inner drama with Bomb Successful, a life worth living. Weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
Now, the Road Traffic Management Corporation is today raiding trucking companies that owe millions of rands in vehicle licensing fees. Now, the operation started last week in Gauteng, where they raided over 23 companies. They've already identified more than 1,700 trucks in Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal. And this recent operation is happening between Ugis and Mbalenhle today. For more on this, we're joined by our reporter Mthobisi Mkhalipi. Mthobisi, good afternoon. So tell us a little bit more about that operation and, of course, how many trucks, if you know, have been stopped so far?
Greetings to you, Sakina, and also to the listener. Yes, the RTMC, they pounced to a company that owns about 150 trucks, also minibus taxis. When they arrived there, they checked if these trucks have a legal license disc. And they said that some of these trucks do not have, in fact, fake license disc, because when they checked on the system, it appeared that they last renewed their license disc in 2020, some of them in 2022, while they have displayed fake license discs that are saying that they are going to expire in 2025. So the owner of the company has been issued with a letter of demand because they say that the company has this license disc, they're worth about 600,000 Rand. So that's what they're supposed to pay within 7 days.
Is that the extent of the action that the authorities are willing to take? Because if the vehicles are operating with fake discs, then surely that's fraud, Mthobisi.
They said that they are going to discontinue some of these vehicles and these trucks, and then also they are some of them will have to go through tests again before they obtain legal license discs. So that is what they are going to do. And also what they are going to, because they say that this operation comes after an investigation that took about 13 months, and they are not going to end here. What they are going to do, they are going to investigate as to who is involved within their departments, who assisted these trucks to obtain these license discs fraudulently. Because in Mpumalanga alone, they say these trucks, this fraud amounts to about 1.2 billion Rand. And then in Free State, it's about 143 million Rand. They said last week they were in Gauteng, and so they are continuing. Even in KwaZulu-Natal, there are such syndicates. So they are saying that they are continuing with their investigations, and those who will be found to be officials who will be found to be on the wrong side of the law, they will also be arrested. They are not only going to arrest the owners of the trucks, but also their own officials who are involved in the syndicates.
Mtobisi, thanks so much. Mtobisi Mkalipi is our reporter in Mpumalanga. The RTMC, Road Traffic Management Corporation, raiding trucking companies. They in Mpumalanga today, and the operation taking place between Ukhis and Emalahleni.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
Now, the Senzo Mayiwa murder trial has been postponed until tomorrow. That's Friday, the 26th of July. This as two of the defense counsels were not in court today. 5 men are currently on trial for the murder of Bafana captain Senzo Mayiwa. But let's check in with our reporter, Pearl Makubane, to find out what the latest is. And this, of course, after the defense were expected to continue with the cross-examination of the Vodacom forensic liaison supervisor, and some interesting developments yesterday coming out of court, seemingly unable to get in touch with our reporter Pearl Magubane there. But there were some discrepancies, and one of the defense counsel actually making the point that there seemed to be a discrepancy between the forensic data that was submitted before that court by a previous witness and that which the current Vodacom expert has brought to the court. So interesting to find out what happened today, but unfortunately we're unable to get hold of our reporter Pearl Makubane. I would imagine she's probably still in court. But of course, do stay tuned to SABC News and here on SAFM for the latest on that Senzo Mayiwa trial. Right, if we have a few more messages, because we have about a minute left, let's squeeze those in.
Good afternoon, Mam Sakina. Good afternoon to the listeners of SAFM. Mam Sakina, I think now it's time for the people of Joburg to stand up and remove Kabelo Kwaman, a person who don't know nothing about politics, who don't know nothing about a mayoral, how to run a municipality. Joburg is a big municipality, Mam Sakina. You can't put just someone who don't know nothing about Joburg. The leadership of Panyaza Lusufi is like a leadership of Esma Khashule, because Esma Khashule was putting everyone, whether you have a qualification or not, but he put you on the strategic position. The people of Joburg must remove Kwamanda. Thank you.
That's very interesting and something that we'll follow up on, because let me play devil's advocate. When you make those assertions about Kabelo Gwamanda, his lack of experience, not knowing how to run a city the size and importance of Johannesburg, which one of the mayors did actually have that sort of qualification, if you think about it? Who actually knew what they were doing? You take Mpho Palatse, for example. Yes, she's a medical doctor, but what does that have to do with running a city like Johannesburg? You take Herman Mashaba himself, perhaps a successful businessman, but what does that have to do with running a city successfully? So I'm as I say, let me play devil's advocate. I want to hear this, and maybe we'll follow up on it tomorrow, in terms of how do you determine, how do you assess and establish that someone is actually fit for purpose in this instance when it comes to running the city of Johannesburg? But that's all our time. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks so much to the production team. Yes, Mudupi Makhalimele with your latest news.
Thanks, Sakina. The top stories: Joburg approves a multi-billion rand loan request, and Typhoon Gamey makes its way to China. A very good afternoon. The Joburg City Council has approved the loan request with the French Development Agency for 2.5 billion rand for the 2023-24 financial year. The majority of political parties voted in favor of the loan, including Action SA and the EFF. The FF Plus, though, voted against it. The city's Dada Morero says they will embark on an aggressive revenue service collection to ensure that Joburg is able to fund its projects. He says financial decisions are made with complete and accurate information.
We are, as councillors, we are, as the city and executive today, going to embark on an aggressive revenue collection process in an attempt to increase our collection rate, move from 86% to the 90% target, which will then ensure that this city is able to fund its CAPEX projects and be able to support its OPEX expenditure. We are therefore making a call to the residents of Johannesburg to also play their part in ensuring that they pay for the services.
The DA has sought to establish the Electoral Court's jurisdiction in its challenge of President Cyril Ramaphosa's address as the head of state on the 26th of May. The former opposition argues that the president violated the Electoral Act and the Electoral Code of Conduct when he allegedly used the address to garner votes for the ANC. It adds that Ramaphosa abused his status as the head of state and also public funds to influence the election outcomes. Advocate Anthony Steyn, representing the DA.
In the case of an electoral period where there's an election underway, firstly, the court has jurisdiction. The only question can be whether or not the court has direct jurisdiction or a litigant has direct access. And we say for two fundamental reasons it is. The first fundamental reason is that this is an electoral period. And in view of the circumstances in which the case is brought, it would not be possible to have a question like this adjudicated first by the High Court and then on appeal before this court. Because of the timing, the events that are the subject of this occurred on the eve of the election.
The manager of the well-known Sesotho rapper Malome Vector, whose real name is Bokang Muleli, says the identification of the bodies will be done later today. Perry Matseletsele has confirmed to our news desk that he's traveling to the Sasolburg State Mortuary for the ID process. The rapper died in a car crash on the N1 near the Koppies off-ramp yesterday, together with two music industry companions. Palesa Matsani reports.
The Free State Health Department says the post-mortems on all three bodies are currently underway. The department also says of the two injured individuals, the man who is in a critical condition is admitted at Bloemfontein's Belonomi Hospital Trauma Unit. A woman who was also injured in the accident but is in a stable condition has requested to be discharged from Boitumelo Hospital in Kroonstad for admission at a private facility. Palesa Matsani, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Police, meanwhile, have opened a case of culpable homicide following Malome Vector's death. It is alleged that the car that the rapper was traveling in ended under the trailer of a truck, killing 3 of the 5 occupants on the scene. Both vehicles are believed to have been traveling in the same direction. 2 others who were passengers in the rapper's car, including a woman, were injured and are in hospital. The man is in a critical condition. And on the international front, Typhoon Gaimi is now moving towards southern China after pummeling Taiwan and the Philippines with torrential rain and strong winds. More from the BBC's Rupert Wingfield Hayes.
Typhoon Gaimi swept across the north of Taiwan during the night, bringing torrential rains and destructive winds. There's now extensive flooding around the city of Yilan in the east and in the south, in and around Taiwan's main port city of Kaohsiung. At least 2 people are reported dead. Gaimi is the biggest typhoon to hit Taiwan in 8 years. Winds have been gusting over 200 kilometers an hour. All domestic flights remain grounded, and services on Taiwan's high-speed rail system are not expected to resume until later on Thursday.
The top story, the Joburg City Council has approved the loan request with the French Development Agency for 2.5 billion rand for the 2023-24 financial year. The Full Circle is up next. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemel.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama. Revved up with the action and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July, Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
S3.
Here he comes. Hello, guys. You're so dramatic. Hey, Bob, it's not me. It's the extra styling kit. The leather seats with the red finish. It's the tow bar, all coming standard with my red Isuzu badge. Wow, now that is extra.
Why be standard when you can get the all-new Isuzu D-Max X-Rider from just 8,742 Rand. Prime less 3.5%, 0% deposit, 40% balloon, and 72 months to pay. Get yours today. Finance is subject to approval. Isuzu Finance, a product of Westbank, a division of First Rand Bank Limited, an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sibeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Ginger me with pillow talking pretty things. Oh, ginger me by candlelight and long walks by the lagoon. Ginger me with intellect and wine. Ginger me, boy, with kindness and cool. Yes, ginger me slowly. Yes, ginger me slowly. Ginger me with poetry and roses in the afternoon. Ginger me with trips to Monaco and to the Nile. Ginger me with power and humility. Oh, ginger me, boy. Ginger me with your love. Ginger me slowly. Yes, ginger me slowly. Take your time, hold me closer, show me your heart, and I'll show you mine. Slow it down, hold me longer. I'll be your girl if we do it slowly. Ginger me with unexpected kisses and a dance. Ginger me with breakfast in bed for just us two. Ginger me with dreams of love and faithfulness. Ginger me, boy, with your heart, boy. Ginger me slowly. Yes, ginger me slowly. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down.
It is none other than the incredibly talented Somi, Rwandan born and of course raised on the continent as well as in New York. That's where she calls home, her parents having immigrated at her formative years, and she's gone on to build an incredible career. In 2018, she nabbed her second NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Jazz Album, and that was for Petite Afrique, which had come out in 2017, and that particular album was inspired by conversations and stories that she had and encountered with local immigrant communities in and around the very vibrant Harlem cultural hub in New York City. And that was what inspired Petite Afrique. And so a lot of the themes that are explored within the context of that particular award-winning jazz album are based on issues of immigration, identity, as well as culture and heritage. And she actually gave quite an interesting conversation on The Guardian. I think it was around about 2015, 2016 when that conversation came out, where she was reflecting back on the significance and the impact of jazz. And at the time, jazz had become the least popular musical genre in the US, and it had recorded only 1.5% of the total music consumption in the US at that time. I wonder if, those stats have somehow changed, considering how the landscape of jazz has changed and the infiltration of people like Somi with a youthfulness and a vibrancy, to the music genre, and also how jazz has sort of interplayed with other genres in understanding that it is the bench rock of all music. So it'd be interesting to explore that conversation, and perhaps maybe one that should be explored on this particular show. I hope you are having a great afternoon thus far. It's a beautiful day in Johannesburg. I get the feeling that we're slowly transitioning into the spring. Not that we had much of a winter anyway, but it's a gorgeous day. The weather is just holding up phenomenally today. It would be lovely if we were doing this show outside today, but alas, we are in the building. We've got lots on the agenda. We're going to be looking at issues around teenage pregnancy. The data there suggesting that this continues to be a crisis of concern in South Africa. We're also going to be touching base on stages, pages, screens, and more with the Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition, and they've opened up calls for entries. On the other side of 2 o'clock, we're going to be delving into legal matters, and we're looking at the implications of living together without actually having tied the knot. What do we call it colloquially? Fat and sit. We're looking at the implications of fat and sits. My camera operator in studio, who's at least of the generation of my dad, if I'm being polite, is shaking his head. That generation does not agree. So we're looking at the legal implications of fat and sits on the other side of 2, and then I'll tell you what else is coming up on the other side of 2. Exciting stuff. We're celebrating a legendary life and his incredible contribution to music. Lebu M has just turned 30. Lion King has he's turned 60. He wishes he was 30. He turned 60, and Lion King has turned 30. And he's going to be in studio today as we reflect on his journey. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back and we'll get into conversation.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Joining me now, we've got Media and Communications Officer at Amnesty International South Africa, Genevieve Quintal, as well as Nga Murumedzi, who is a children's rights advocate and activist, rather. And we are talking around teenage pregnancy. So the rates continue to rise in South Africa, at alarming and concerning levels, with over 100,000 girls that have given birth between April 2022 and March 2023. So that's in a span of a year. And on average, between the ages of 10 and 14, that number has increased by 48%. Very disturbing indeed. We've got, let's start with you, Genevieve. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm well, thanks. And thank you so much for having me.
Only a pleasure. These are disturbing numbers, given the age groups, the age cohort we are talking about here, teenage girls. If we drill it down to that age group between 10 and 14, with that number saying 48% of these girls are giving birth.
Yeah, it's a chilling number, Bridget. And I think it's 48% increase from the last Stats SA report. But still, one 10-year-old giving birth is one too many. In a country where the age of consent is not even near 10 years old, a 10-year-old should not be engaging in sexual conduct. But really, these stats are really concerning. And that's what's really made us look at this even further. The year before last, we started looking at child and teenage pregnancy through our real maternity issue. And when we looked at the stats again, and the most recent stats are the stats released last year, the 2022 stats, this issue just isn't going away. And so we realized, we need to speak more about this. We need to ensure that people aren't just seeing these as numbers. These are real people. While we're saying that this is a societal issue that needs to be tackled by everyone, the people together with the government, there is a responsibility on the state to create an enabling environment so that people can make informed decisions, autonomous decisions. There's so many layers to this. We know there's a gender-based violence layer.
Yeah.
We spoke about consent, and not every case is a gender-based violence case. But we also need to look at eliminating stigmatization of adolescent pregnancy and abortion, because we've seen girls having to drop out of school because of this. We need to look at how people are accessing comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services and information. How many times we've heard stories of a teenage girl going to the clinic and asking for contraceptives and being made to feel ashamed for doing that. Then we've got to look at education. And I know this is such a difficult one for a lot of parents especially. Looking at the need for effective age-appropriate, good quality sexuality education and life skills. And that also must be delivered by well-trained teachers. So I do think there is, research shows that education plays a big part actually in improving attitudes to things like using contraception. To knowledge prevents as well. And so these are all the layers that we are looking at.
And Guy, let's rope you in here as a children's rights activist. And Genevieve paints the landscape for us on, some of perhaps even the factors that are driving this worrying trend. Where do we begin to enter this conversation in ways that it would have the most impact for change?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Good afternoon, Genevieve, and to your listeners. Firstly, thank you for having me here. I'd like to pick up on the element of comprehensive sexuality education, as Genevieve has put on the table, and the conversation around that and the developments in South Africa in terms of policy development and implementation around CSE, and how that filters down into adolescent and youth-friendly services at our facilities, and how that feeds into the attitude of healthcare workers. So it's not a point of where do we start, because that's taking it as though there has not been these conversations before. But the reality is the statistics show that whatever has been in place has failed. When you have one child that has to drop out of school because they are pregnant, or a 10-year-old whose future is now of motherhood. And remember, these are statistics that are recorded because these young people have come to facilities. We also have to be mindful that there are those that are blind to the statistics. Those are not included. So we need to go back to the drawing board and say the policies are in place. We spoke of consent as Genevieve was speaking. Yeah. There is a policy in place. But we also then realize that when you have the conversations on the ground, there are the assumptions that, for example, parents are adverse to comprehensive sexuality education. That's not necessarily 100% true, because the parent of a child who is a teenage mother will say, I wish my child had had this service available to them. So we need to eradicate that blanket approach. But then also we need to reflect on, over the 20 plus years that the comprehensive sexuality policies have been in effect in South Africa, what has happened then? We have changed the language, and we've gone even in terms of facilitation and empowerment of educators. That's in place in policy. But the biggest thing is all of this is happening at a high level. The societies are not included. Language is not reflected upon. And one big barrier is that of language. The biggest setback of CSE was that term sexuality. And you find across even Southern Africa that the anti-rights movements are saying that you want to teach our children about sex. But comprehensive sexuality education is not just about sex. It's also about human rights realization, SRS and SRHR, and now we've added J to that, and justice, right?
Yeah.
So we need to go back and we say, as all of us represented, how do we go back into the communities? Because we can't have interventions for teenage mothers without involving teenage mothers to know what was the gap. How did you end up in this reality? GBV was mentioned in the conversation already. What are we doing intersecting with Department of Justice to say, when you are seeing statistics of a 10-year-old and yet there's no arrest at the other side of that, what is it? They might tell you that, well, the father of this baby is an 11-year-old, and that's not a crime per se, so you can't persecute. But it also shows that that is a child that is in need of care and protection, and not necessarily meaning that they're subject to abuse, but because they have not been equipped and empowered in order to act in a way that is not detrimental to them. So we need to go back, and I think we can't emphasize enough the direction of where development practitioners are going. Integrate the community. When you look at a policy, it's in technical English. And I even have to go and grab a Merriam-Webster for me to understand what the English means, right? Now, you expect a mother who has up to grade 10 because of what the economy did to her and her access to education to decipher this and then disseminate it to her 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, and yet the English doesn't make sense to her. So are we making a conscious effort to ensure that caregivers have got adequate access to information that is reflective and contextually relevant to them?
Yeah. The conversation is open for you on 086 000 2032. That is our in-studio number. 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. If you'd like to send through a WhatsApp voice note, you're more than welcome to do so. And as you listen in on this conversation around the very alarming high rates of child and teenage pregnancies in South Africa, with over 100,000 girls giving birth over a one-year period between 2022 and 2023. What are your areas of concern? Perhaps what are your suggestions as a parent, as a member of society and community? Where are we lacking in this conversation? And maybe what should our interventions be from the ground up? We'd love to hear your inputs on 061 410 4107. That's our WhatsApp line. Or 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. And as we sort of navigate ourselves around this conversation, we also can't be sort of blind to the rippling effects that this has, not only on the immediateness of a young girl's life, but also to her future and perhaps even the generations that come underneath her lineage. Because, Ngai, as you point out the fact, for instance, that this generation of young people has been raised by a generation of Gen Zs and millennials who maybe themselves also started off on a bad footing. And if we are to believe that women are essentially the architects of society, these trends then will cause future problems and future cause for alarm. How do we break that cycle? How do we re-engineer and disrupt that cycle to set them up in the immediate, but also to ensure that just in the lineage of who they are and go on to be, the trajectory of their lives is different?
That's such a rich question. And yesterday I listened in on a conversation at the back end of the face of poverty and how that intersects with teenage pregnancy. And the lived narrative that was being painted was a woman who is 35. I myself am 35, but she has a 19-year-old. And her 19-year-old has 2 children. She has a 14-year-old who has a 1-year-old. And they are in when you think of poverty, the dire strains of poverty, that's them. And the conversation was also around how do we change that narrative? We have a left generation. Now we are looking at poverty in terms of the socioeconomic expression, but there's also health poverty. We know that education can lead to better decisions around sexuality, therefore mitigating things like HIV and ultimately teenage pregnancy. But a lot of our young girls, firstly, are living in economic situations that make them victims to being preyed on by men who have money, the blesser syndrome.
Yes.
And then we have the reality that it's no longer frowned upon the way it was frowned upon. And it's actually almost normalized. So much so that girls don't understand why they must get an education and get a degree, or they could be at Wits and go to engineering breakfast and find themselves a husband and not attain a degree. That's if they get into tertiary. Or they can find access to resources by selling their physical being. And those are the narratives we need to demystify. But we also can't negate the fact that technology has advanced so far that even trends that are normalized in a different context have become normalized in a different reality simply because of the global village. So we know that young people they're educating each other, they're telling each other correct and incorrect information, they're even giving each other therapy, and so there's a generation that's been shut out in terms of where young children are seeking information. So how are we going to undo this? We need to go back and sit together. And I said it that I can't emphasize enough that thing of integration, multi-sectoral, multilateral approaches, because we are not economists in this conversation.
Absolutely.
We are not psychologists in this discussion. We are not teenage mothers in this discussion. We are not black teens or colored teens or white teens. Those are all representations, because we need to stop speaking on behalf of and start allowing platforms for even young people. I mean, there's now the advent of children's summits, where children come forward and say, look, when you look at the amount of abuse being perpetrated on children, we want as children to speak. And so we need to leverage.
Let's hold it there for a second as we take the headline news. We'll come back, though, on the other side of this and continue our conversation. And, of course, our lines are open for you as well to be a part of the discourse.
Very good afternoon. With the news headlines, Modupi Makhalemele. Parliament says it is worried that the current financial framework for the 2024-25 financial year is not sustainable. The Joburg City Council has approved the loan request with the French Development Agency for 2.5 billion rand for the 2023-24 financial year. And the Chinese ambassador to South Africa says the AU's role in the G20 will enhance the relationship between the group and Africa. Details of these and other stories coming up at 2.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.4 FM in Hermanus.
086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. We're reflecting on the disturbing rise in teenage pregnancies in South Africa. And of course, we are in conversation with Genevieve Quintal from Amnesty International and Nga Murubedzi, who is a children's rights activist. Let's just quickly go to, is it Zig in Rustenburg? How are you?
In Randburg.
Randburg, sorry,
yeah,
my apologies, Zig. How are you?
No, I'm very well. I don't feel so well when I listen to the solution, the first thought solution to this problem of 10-year-old pregnancies is birth control. My belief is that birth control is going to be tremendously aggravated, if that is our first and only thought. This is a very deep-rooted problem of it's subhuman for any society to have this situation being aggravated at the rate of 46%. I heard them say this just now. In how many years? In 1 year, 46% up. Of in 10 to 14-year-old pregnancies. And no birth control will solve this. It can only aggravate it if that is the only idea we've got in mind. This is a deep-rooted societal problem in communities that don't exist, where there are no decent teachers, where there is no police, and where there is no community. They don't even have a community center in most of these places.
True. Zig, thank you so much. Thank you for the contribution, and we definitely get the gist of your concern. And just to correct myself, so according to the research, between April 2017 and September 2021, the number of births to children and adolescent girls between the age of 10 and 14 increased by 48.7%. And between April 2022 and 2023, in a 1-year span, we saw over 100,000 girls giving birth. We've got Dumile in the Eastern Cape. How are you? Dumile? Okay.
That I think as parents, we have allowed the situation to be just wild. I think we have become too wild or too friendly to our living conditions, as parents. To such an extent that kids, we can now have kids' rights. I don't understand how we have kids' rights when we don't have kids' protection. Because I hear the lady talking about kids' rights, but I don't hear her talking about kids' protection.
So you heard her talk about kids' rights, but no kids' protection.
Protection, like you see, I can tell you, in many communities in Africa, you don't get into a relationship with a woman without the intention of marrying them. If an adult see you in the street with a female, then you are called immediately because you have to explain what are your intentions. Why are you with a girl in the street? Because this is not a jungle. This is not to be talking about. But we are too friendly. Our kids watch TikTok, which is allowed by network operators, MTN. But we are free to do things because we want to claim we are in a global village. I don't understand how.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. And I think maybe, Genevieve, let's go to you because it goes in tandem, right? We can't negate the rights of children. Part and parcel of recognizing children's rights is that in there also is contained their right to protection.
Absolutely, Bridget. And Guy spoke about it, when we spoke about consent and where is the SA Police Service? In an event where a pregnancy occurs as a result of rape or statutory rape, as we spoke about, cases have to be reported to the police. The criminal justice system needs to work timeously, efficiently, effectively, because also, and I guess with all crimes, if we don't, it's obviously underreported, but if we don't see action, if perpetrators are not held accountable, there's no deterrent, because people are like, well, I'm going to get away with this. No one's going to report me. So yes, there's a big part in terms of that as well, and that's where children's rights come in as well. And this is why we're also saying from Amnesty International, as a legal human rights organization, based on research, and we look at holding governments, corporates, etc., accountable. This is where government has a part to play. It has a responsibility to create that enabling environment. I thought it was great what Ngai said about the language of policy. The policy is there, yes, and government has done quite a bit to add to policy, but the language that is being used, the way it's written, so that everyone can understand, I think that is a very big part, and we call it human rights education, and there needs to be a lot of human rights education, I think, as well, and making sure that everyone understands these processes and these policies.
Yeah.
But I also think, we have to also, and government has a part to play in this, in eliminating discrimination and destigmatizing. When we're forcing this 14-year-old girl to leave school, and when I say we, it happens often, it's not in policy, but 14, 16-year-old girls are forced to leave school. Because, you can't have a pregnant girl in the classroom, what message are you sending?
Yes.
That girl has a right to be there. She should be able to finish her education. That's her right as a child as well. There are so many layers to this, but that's why we say eliminating discrimination and destigmatization. We're not saying that it's okay, but we also do need to deal with that part of it.
And I want to touch on, my brain, as you're going, my brain often loops to various conversations we've had on the show. And there was a conversation we had sometime last year with an activist in this space, talking, for instance, about how we have the policies, right? We have the policy frameworks, we have the policy and the legislation. What is sometimes missing is the implementation of these great policies. And I remember the conversation at the time, it was based on a call that says, for instance, when underage young women present themselves at places of healthcare service, whether it's hospital, clinic, or whatever, pregnant, there is nothing that compels healthcare providers to then report the underage pregnancy to the sort of policing arms of SAPS or whatever, so that there can be an investigation as to how did this underage woman or young girl, not woman, young girl get pregnant by way of rape, by way of this, that, or the other. And there's a call to interrogate perhaps those missing links in policy versus implementation. And all stakeholders saying, well, from our end, the reservation is here. Young girls won't then come in, which is a just concern. Young girls won't come in to get healthcare advice. But if a 12-year-old and 11-year-old is pregnant, surely we should then be obligated as healthcare providers to call the police in, to call children's services in, to say there's a young underage girl here that's pregnant.
Absolutely, Bridget. And, if you go back to what the law says, right? So a child below the age of 12 does not have the capacity to consent to sexual activity. So absolutely. If an 11-year-old child is coming into your hospital, your clinic, your rooms or whatever, you should be reporting that immediately. But then there's also, and I don't think a lot of people know this about the law on consent, like children between the ages of 12 and 16 can consent. So if there is only a 2-year, I think it's a 2 or 3 year gap between the children, that's actually considered as all right, as consent. But if consent is given to a person who is 18 years or older, the latter is guilty of statutory rape. There's so many small things within the law, and I think we also need to educate people on what the law says and how we're going to implement that law. But absolutely, you make such a good point. If an 11-year-old child, if anyone below the age of 12 comes and is pregnant, that should be reported immediately, because no matter what, that is statutory rape.
Let's also quickly, just as I run out of time, Genevieve, let's get to the campaign that Amnesty International has launched that's focused on prevention and, of course, policy reform.
Absolutely. So this is our campaign called Scan the Scar, and we're really trying to shine a light on this. And so by doing that, we've actually taken three stories of real children and teenagers who have gone through pregnancy. And their stories have been written into poems by some of South Africa's best poets, such as Lebo Mashile. And these poems and Koleka Putuma, Themba Mvula, yes. And they've narrated these stories and we have partnered with them, Joe Public and Spotify. It's on Spotify that you can actually go and listen to these real stories. And then we're asking people to sign our letter to the president. We want these letters, all these letters, to go to the president, because, as I said, from Amnesty side, part of our research is advocating for change in policy, etc., the government. So, listen to these real stories and some of them are based on gender-based violence, some are based on an older man with a younger girl. Go listen to what these girls have been through.
Yeah.
To really get a sense, this is not just, the numbers are shocking, but these are real people, and we want people to feel that and to take action based on that.
Genevieve Quintal, thank you so much for the time. And Genevieve is with Amnesty International South Africa, and of course Nga Murumbetsi, who is a children's rights activist. Let us get ready to take a pause here. When we come back on the other side, we're going to get into stages, pages, screens, and more. And there is a call for the annual Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition that is open for call. It's the 5th annual Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition happening in Cape Town. And we'll touch base with the director of the project and just find out who's eligible to enter this one and what we can expect.
When Freddie, a troubled woman, is nearly assaulted outside a nightclub, the toilet attendant steps in to help. Baba, a former child soldier, acts with swift, unstoppable brutality. She's entranced. The pair form an instant, intoxicating connection. Something dark within both of them quickly emerges. Soon, they set about exacting revenge on people from Freddie's past. Baba's skill for violence and Freddie's tinge of psychopathy prove a lethal combination. But they are not the only ones on the hunt. We hunt together, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 24th of July. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
It's Winter Carnival at Food Lovers Market. Get loose bananas for only $12.99 per kilo. Buy 3 125-gram blueberry punnets for 50 Rand. And save big on a 7 kg potato pocket, a 7 kg onion pocket, a butternut pocket, and a 3 kg bag of carrots. All for just 199 Rand per combo. Valid till this Sunday at Food Lovers Market. Winter Carnival now on.
A century is full of thrilling moments. You can break it down to 10 decades. It is a journey of all kinds of challenges, but winners don't focus on the storm. They look forward to a rainbow. By contrast, South Africa tied its best ever gold medal performance in 100 years. From 1912 in Stockholm to London in 2012. Once again, it was in the pool that Team SA did most of their triumphing, with Cameron van der Berg setting a world record in winning the men's 100-meter breaststroke. And who will ever forget Chad de Clos toppling Michael Phelps in the men's 200-meter butterfly.
It's going to be close. Does he touch? He doesn't. Leclos touched because Phelps got it wrong on the line. It's unbelievable.
Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
Stages, pages, screens, and more with Bridget Masinga.
A quick conversation now with Shanae Judes, who's the founder of SJ Artists and director at Wavescape Festival and project director of Sea Walls South Africa. So it's the 5th annual Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition competition, and there's a call for entries that's out. How are you, Shanae? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Now I can. How are you?
Oh, good, thanks, and you?
I'm fabulous. Talk to us about the Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition. 5 years it's been now.
5 years. We open at the moment with a great new topic and theme for this year, which is Wonders Through Focus.
Wonders through focus.
Yes, so macro photography basically.
Macro photography. Tell us, what is macro photography for those of us who are not photographers?
So it's basically looking through, in other words, it's the worlds within the worlds. that are revealed through outstanding macro photography. So when you're looking at like a flower, if you like really go into it, you're going to start to see like more of the like elements of that flower, and it becomes abstract. So what you're going to see as the print eventually on the promenade will be abstract, and you have to read what it is basically, and it will tell you what it is. Yeah, and it's quite a beautiful like sect of photography and quite unique actually.
Very interesting. Tell us, let's reflect on the last 5 years. I mean, if it's been 5 years of the Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition, it means that it's been 5 years of success.
Totally. We actually did one in 2014, and then we've kind of been doing, but more regularly, like every year, we like now have a theme. We push it out there. Entries are open to all South Africans, and it doesn't matter if you are a budding photographer or a professional photographer, so it's open to everyone, as long as your file format can blow up pretty big to fit the size that we print on the promenade.
Now, I know that over the years you've reflected on some interesting themes. You've looked at movement and South African landscapes, oceans and birds, and of course this year you're opening it up to macro photography. Is this a specialized sort of arena of photography that a lot of people may not be familiar with or may not even practice in?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty specialized in a way. You got to have probably like quite specific equipment, and I think that the outcome of it and what we're going to be able to bring to the community is going to be really beautiful.
Now, why activate a Sea Point Promenade? Most people are used to exhibitions being behind sort of square white boxes in galleries and museums, and you've decided to activate the promenade.
Absolutely. So, firstly, promenade sees all walks of life all year round. You've got youth, you've got elder, you've got internationals, locals, various different people from all over. It's open to the public. Anybody can go there. And I think like public spaces are really important to include art in them, because of what you just said now, how art is often quite inaccessible. You have to go to the white-walled gallery. And this is a way that we can like take it out and give it to like the general public basically.
Talk to me quickly in our last minute. So the deadline for the entries is on the 9th of August. Where do prospective photographers go, and what do they need to upload, if anything at all?
So the best place is probably the ORMS website. And then that's going to have all the information along there. So that will be like ORMS. Let me just actually get that quickly. I'll tell you shortly. ORMSdirect.co.za. And you probably go to the blog page and have a look in there, and it will give you the links to the submission forms and everything. The file sizes you probably should be able to shoot in RAW, and the images you're going to provide is going to be just under 5 megabytes as a file size. And then we're going to sift through we usually get around 4,000 to 6,000 entries for these exhibitions, and we sit and go through them and we whittle it down to 20.
All right.
Which is a good, fun part of curating the project.
Absolutely. Shani Judes, thank you so much for the time today. And of course, Shani Judes is the founder of SJ Artists. You can go to ormsdirect.co.za. That's spelled ORMS direct.co.za if you are a photographer and you specialize in macro photography and you want to be part of the 5th annual Sea Point Promenade photographic exhibition. And there are some prizes up, by the way, for, amongst those 20 finalists for the ultimate first prize and the winner of the student prize as well as 3rd and 4th place runner-ups. And all the necessary information is on ormsdirect.co.za. It's just gone 10:02. It's time for Kids Corner.
and welcome to Nali Bali. By listening to stories on the radio, it helps you build your listening skills. Listening to a story is a great way for you to learn new words, build your literacy skills, and increase language retention rates. There are even a lot of children who are struggling readers who can dramatically improve their reading level by listening to a story on the radio. By listening to a story on the radio, you train yourself to pay attention for longer amounts of time. That way, you'll have an easier time focusing on other tasks in the classroom and in the future. It's time to listen to a story. Today's story is called What Miss Green Said, written by Jason van Rensbeck. But before we listen to today's story, let's all get up and... dance! Once upon a time, there were 3 children who were neighbors. They were best friends even though they were not of the same age. Sam was the oldest, Liam was the youngest, and Maya was in the middle. Every afternoon, they played together after school. One windy afternoon, Maya said,
"This is the perfect weather to fly a kite."
Oh, yes, it is. I'm not sure where my kite is though, but I'll try to find it.
Liam said,
"It's all right. I'll make you a new one if you can't find yours. Now let's get our kites. We'll meet at my house in 10 minutes.
Sam said, Sam found his rainbow kite. Maya found her bright red kite with a long yellow and orange tail. And Liam was very happy because he found his shiny purple and green kite under his bed. 10 minutes later, the friends met at Sam's house.
Let's go and fly our kites in the field. Let's go. Yeah.
Soon, Sam, Maya, and Liam were lost in the magic of flying their kites. Their colorful kites danced in the wind in a blue, cloudless sky. The children laughed as they raced to keep up with their soaring kites. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept across the field. The wind tugged at their kites, snapped the strings, and blew them away. The kites landed with a crash in a nearby backyard.
Oh, no. Our kites have landed in Miss Green's backyard,
exclaimed Maya.
Oh, no. I've heard that she's a witch who makes potions and casts spells.
Liam added,
I've heard that too. But let's try to reach our kites without actually going into Miss Green's backyard,
suggested Sam. The children stood at the edge of Miss Green's yard.
I'm too scared to go into her backyard,
Maya said in a shaky voice.
Ew, the yard is such a mess,
said Liam.
Oh no, a kite's broke one of Mrs. Green's windows,
exclaimed Sam, pointing at a broken down house. The children's kite lay under a dusty window with a brand new crack in it.
We can't reach our kite without going into the yard,
said Maya.
Oh no. I hope she's not so angry about the broken window. Then she casts spells on us,
stammered Liam. Sam turned to his friends.
Okay, guys, we need to be brave. I'm the oldest, so I'll knock on the front door.
Sam walked up the path to the door. Maya and Liam followed close behind. Sam knocked on the door. The door creaked loudly as Miss Green opened it. She had a big stick in her hand and stared at the frightened children.
Excuse us,
said Sam.
We're very sorry, but the wind blew our kites into your yard and they cracked a window.
To the children's surprise, Miss Green smiled warmly and said,
Oh, no need to worry, my dears. Accidents happen, and windows can be fixed. Let's fetch your kites. Follow me.
Sam, Maya, and Liam smiled, especially when they saw that the big stick was actually Miss Green's walking stick. She wasn't a witch. She was a kind old lady. As they followed Miss Green through the house, the children saw how neglected it was. They fetched their kites and started to leave, but Maya hesitated.
Miss Green, would it be okay if we came back another day to help you with your house and your yard?
She asked. It was Miss Green's turn to look surprised. She smiled and said,
Of course, my dears. You're welcome anytime.
The next afternoon, Sam, Maya, and Liam returned to Miss Green's house. She was pleased to see them. Liam said,
I'm very good at cooking, so I can clean the kitchen spotless and make you a wonderful meal.
Maya added,
Ooh, I'm good at gardening, so I can tidy your backyard.
I'm good at making and mending things, so I can fix the broken window and anything else that needs to be repaired.
Sam explained.
I don't know where it is. I'm still using the soap.
Oh, I found the brush. Oh, wait. Have you guys seen the duster?
Nah, I haven't seen it yet.
I need the broom, guys.
Let's just start cleaning.
Okay.
The children were very busy. Liam prepared a delicious meal for Miss Green. Maya trimmed the plants, cleared the weeds, and swept up the dead leaves. Sam fixed the window, squeaky door, and a wobbly table. When they had finished, Miss Green got up and stood in front of each child in turn. She started with Sam.
Sam, I predict that one day the world will praise you for your fine work with your hands.
Sam's chest swelled with pride. Then Miss Green turned to Maya.
Maya, your hands tend the plants with love. I predict the earth itself will reward you for your hard work.
Maya blushed as the words warmed her cheeks and heart. Finally, Miss Green turned to Liam and said,
Oh, how can I forget about you, Liam? What a kind heart you have. I predict people will taste the love in the food you make.
Liam grinned from ear to ear. From that day, the three children visited Miss Green regularly. They helped to look after her home and yard. They spent time talking and laughing with her, and they learned from her wisdom. As the children grew older, they moved away. Sam became a skilled craftsman, Maya became a well-known botanist, and Liam became a brilliant chef. Miss Green's predictions all came true. And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called What Miss Green Said, written by Jason van Rensberg. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages, as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
The top stories at 2 o'clock. Zizi Kodwa resigns from Parliament and Joburg approves a multi-billion rand loan request. A very good afternoon. Corruption-accused ANC MP Zizi Kodwa has resigned as a Member of Parliament. In a statement, ANC SG Fikile Mbalula says he received Kodwa's formal resignation as an MP yesterday. Kodwa had appeared earlier this week in court on corruption charges and his case was postponed to next month. Mbalula says the resignation is with immediate effect and the party has accepted it and has wished him well. Parliament says it is worried that the current financial framework for the 2024 financial year is not sustainable. This as the National Assembly considers and is set to vote over the appropriations bill According to the Standing Committee on Appropriations chairperson Musi Maimani, the fiscus is largely consumed by the social wage and government's debt service costs.
We are looking at an appropriation of over 1.1 trillion rand for the 2024-25 financial year. And I think it's important to paint a picture of what it tells us. It tells us that for every 100 rand that we receive as a government, 60 rand of it will go to social wage, 16 rand of it will go off to the national debt servicing costs. It's a story of a low growth, and ultimately debt in this country will peak at 440.2 billion rands in the 2026-2027 period. I think the picture before us tells us of a fiscal framework that's unsustainable.
The Joburg City Council has approved the loan request with the French Development Agency for 2.5 billion rand for the 2023-24 financial year. The majority of political parties voted in favor of the loan, including Action SA and the EFF. The FF Plus, though, voted against it. The city's Dada Morero says they will embark on an aggressive revenue service collection to ensure that Joburg is able to fund its projects.
We are, as councillors, we are, as the city and executive today, going to embark on an aggressive revenue collection process in an attempt to increase our collection rate, move from 86% to the 90% target, which will then ensure that this city is able to fund its capex projects and be able to support its OPEX expenditure. We are therefore making a call to the residents of Johannesburg to also play their part in ensuring that they pay for the services.
A large clinical trial conducted in South Africa and Uganda has shown that an injection administered twice a year can give young women 100% protection against HIV. The trial sought to establish whether the 6-month injection of lecanopavir would provide better protection than 2 other drugs, both of them pills taken daily. All 3 are pre-exposure prophylaxis drugs. Medical research teams from the University of Cape Town led the South African part of the trial. Linda Gale Becker is a professor at UCT.
This breakthrough gives great hope that we have a proven, highly effective prevention tool to protect people from HIV. HIV scientists and activists hope that young people may find that having to make this prevention decision only twice a year may reduce unpredictability and barriers.
The Road Traffic Management Corporation is conducting operations targeting a number of companies that allegedly obtained their fleet's licenses fraudulently in several provinces. In Mpumalanga, a truck company known as MK Engineering in Kriel near Emalahleni was served with a letter of demand after it was found that their trucks and minibus taxis have illegal license discs worth over 600,000 rand. The RTMC says the operations are as a result of an investigation conducted for 13 months. And the Chinese ambassador to South Africa, Wu Peng, says the AU's role in the G20 will enhance the relationship between the group and Africa. Last year, the G20 industrialized countries adopted a resolution to include the AU as its newest member. In an exclusive interview with our news desk, Peng said that the G20 summit must not overlook the challenges that Africa is facing.
China has always worked to accommodate Africa's aspiration in G20. We worked vigorously for the African Union's full G20 membership. South Africa will host the G20 summit next year. China will fully support South Africa in hosting the summit, and we will support you push the international community, the G20, refocused on African agenda.
The top story at 2 o'clock, corruption-accused ANC MP Zizi Kodwa has resigned as a Member of Parliament. For SAFM News, Gemudupima Khalemele, The Full Circle continues.
Every year, 30,000 missionaries are called to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints across the globe, the largest full-time missionary force of any church. Most are under 25 and away from home for up to 2 years. And the biggest training center in Europe is located in Chorley, Lancashire. The Mormons Are Coming follows the journey of 3 young missionaries through the first few months of training and work in the field, which can make or break them. Tune into The Mormons Are Coming, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best dockies with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The incredible story is written by the classical performance of a magnificent Olympian. Josiah Tugwani painted Atlanta in the colors of Africa Borwa. He took center stage and rounded off a memorable Olympics in style. Tugwani emerged victorious in a 124-man battlefield from 79 countries to claim gold in just 3 seconds. Every countryman wants a medallion. Ezekiel Sipeng delivered silver in the men's 800 meters. Marianne Kriel joined the podium with a collection of bronze in the women's 100-meter backstroke. Magical moments of the Olympics. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
On the dark side of the moon, yeah, is where I felt I reside. Till the day I met you, I was cold, frozen inside. When the whole world had turned on me, and others couldn't decide. You're the smile in my tears, you are the smile in my dreams. You're my life. You're my When others think it's fair to judge me, will you lend me your smile? That's all I need for the day. And you are my kind of joy in the wilderness of my feelings, in the dreariness of my dreamings. Sweet. And you are sweetest thing. You're my love. You're my love. You're my You're the sweetest thing I've ever known. Sweetest thing, sweetest thing. In the dreariness of my feelings, in the emptiness of my dreams. Sweetest thing.
Simpiwe Dana coming through with My Light. It's just gone 10 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga on SAFM, leading the conversation. On Thursdays after 2, on the other side of 2, we delve into legal matters of sorts and we unpack all kinds of themes under this banner. And today we thought we'd take a look at living together outside of what some call holy matrimony, living together without the institution of marriage being in place, and all the things that you need to know in as far as the law is concerned for all you guys who are fatting and sitting or considering to fat and sit, as we call it on the streets. 086 000 2032 061 4104107 is our WhatsApp line. Are you cohabitating with somebody, and how is that working? Let's just double this up with us being intrusive in your life. You can remain anonymous, it's fine. We'd love to know if you are living with somebody right now that you are not married to, and have you had any considerations around what might happen should something happen to one of you? Should something happen to one of you and you've built this entire life living together under one roof outside of the legal institution of marriage, have you given any thought as to what might happen to yourself, to your partner, whether it's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your life partner, however you guys term yourselves? Or is this a conversation that you've had between the two of you and reached some consensus? Like, what happens to the car? What happens to the house? What happens to the furniture and the assets? And if you'll have joint savings, what happens to those situations? Have your respective families been informed? Are they in agreement that whatever the two of you decide in this situation is to happen, should something happen to one of you, is exactly what your families are going to stick to? Or maybe in the back of your mind, you also have some concerns that should something happen to you or your partner, that the remaining partner might be left in a little bit of a disadvantage and might be left in a messy situation with your family. 086 000 2032 and 061 4104107. You can always share anonymously. Angie Poole is joining us now, Manager of Estates, Business Restructuring at BDO South Africa. How are you doing this afternoon, Angie?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity on your show. And good afternoon to all the listeners.
Thank you for the time indeed. We appreciate it. Let's talk about this situation of sort of living together. You know, we romanticize it as adults, and we explain it in all kinds of ways. And I guess before we even get to the legalities, let's just touch a little bit on the psychology and socialization of it, right? There's pros and there's cons to living together with your partner before legally getting married.
Absolutely. You know, times in the modern times we're living in, times have changed, and a lot of times the law is a bit slow to catch up on an ever-evolving society. So people always don't understand what the implications are if you live together and you're not legally married.
Yeah.
And there's massive implications.
Absolutely. Because as much as the idea is novel to say, I want to get to know the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with before I marry them, it's a novel idea. In practice, things and circumstances happen, and you are opening yourself and the other person up to all kinds of messiness and liability and maybe even negativity from a legal perspective.
Well, many couples are under the impression that if you live together for a certain amount of time, you buy assets together, you have children together, but you're not married, that you become married in terms of a common law marriage.
Yeah.
And that protects you. Well, rude awakening, there's no such thing in South African law as a common law marriage. It's an assumption and it's a myth. There's no such thing in our law.
So
you can live together for 20 years.
Yeah.
You are not considered married.
Mm-hmm. And that has been the general assumption.
Absolutely.
That has been the general assumption. People go, I'm his common law wife. I'm a common law husband.
Not in South African law, unfortunately, no.
Sure. Okay. So then what do we do? Because we also have to be realistic about our social behaviors. And people will stay together for a whole host of reasons that make sense as to why they're staying together. But when we take that decision to stay together, perhaps what is the first area of consideration?
Well, first of all, you can enter into a cohabitation agreement. And a cohabitation agreement is basically an agreement that regulates your relationship. Things in the agreement are like, if you want to buy properties together, what happens to ownership of the property? Who pays the deposit of the house? Who shares in the mortgage bond? How do the bills get dealt with? So you can set all this out in a cohabitation agreement. And what you can do as well is, if you want the cohabitation agreement to be recognized and legal for third-party use, you can have it notarized by a notary public. And you would ask, why would you need to do this binding legal agreement for third parties? Well, the benefits of that is that you can use that to apply for a spousal visa if you just living together.
Okay. Explain that for us a little bit more. So what is a third party?
So for third party, it's basically, say you want to apply for to buy a house for a mortgage bond.
Okay.
But you're not married. So you can use the registered cohabitation agreement with your application to the bank to saying, we're in a cohabitation, we're in a partnership, we want to buy this home together, and here's our agreement.
I see. Okay. And I guess that also putting sort of that cohabitation agreement in place at the onset, no matter how unromantic it is, it also safeguards in the instance, and it sounds dreary when we say it, but death could happen to anybody at any point in time.
Absolutely. But besides the cohabitation agreement, everybody must have a valid last will and testament. Now, if you have two people living together, they cohabitate, and the one passes away and does not have a will, the surviving partner does not automatically inherit. The Intestate Succession Act refers to a spouse, descendants, which are children, ascendants, family members, and that. The Intestate Succession Act does not recognize a partner. So you can't inherit if you don't have a valid will. So your partner is left out in the dark. So now you have assets together, you've been living together, now the person passes away and they can't inherit.
Yes. Sure. All right. So the Interstate Succession Act, you say, does not recognize a romantic partnership in that sense.
No.
Lots to consider. By the way, our lines are open 086 000 2032 and 086 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line. Now, how binding are these cohabitation agreements? And what perhaps should be spelled out in them?
Well, if they're properly registered, executed, signed before a notary public, and they've got a protocol recordal number, then it's a binding legal document.
Okay.
And they are valid, and one of there's following conditions that can apply. You should both enter into the agreement freely and voluntarily. And it's agreement that can set out a form of a written contract Each of you must sign the document. And like I said earlier, you can keep the agreement up to date from time to time where, say, for instance, you purchase a new property. Put in the terms and conditions of the new property, then update it. We've got new pets.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for the vet bills of the new pets? Or if someone dies, what happens to our pets? How do household bills get dealt with? So you can update this agreement from time to time as your life evolves and, major things happen in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from what I'm hearing, Angie, is, part of the reasons why people will get into these sort of cohabitation structures, right, is the rebellion against documents. People go, I don't want to be tied down by a piece of paper by way of marriage. But essentially, to safeguard yourself, and you are echoing from your perspective as an estate manager, exactly what has been echoed by a lot of the family law advocates that we've had here, to say, simplify your life by putting a paper structure in place, because it just makes things easier in the event of the inevitable or where things go awry.
Also, at the end of the day, when a relationship starts, no one wants to have these uncomfortable discussions. But you have to. It's important to have a last will and testament. It's important to have a cohabitation agreement. A lot of people aren't even aware that there is such a document that exists as a cohabitation agreement.
This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Oh, wow.
She says, oh, wow. Talk to us about the domestic partnership bill. Is it the same as the cohabitation agreement?
No. It's a bill that was a draft bill that was published in 2008. So let's take a step back.
Okay.
If you look at civil marriages, they are regulated by the Marital Status Act. You've got your Civil Unions Act that regulates civil unions. But there's no law in South Africa that regulates domestic partnerships. So there was a proposed draft bill published in 2008, and this domestic partnership bill would have catered for domestic partnerships to be registered and just sort of regulate this type of cohabitation.
Okay.
And the bill was aimed at harmonizing family law with the provisions in the Bill of Rights and the constitutional values of equality and dignity. And despite numerous recommendations and the publication of the draft bill in 2008, South Africa currently has no dedicated domestic partnership bill and legislation that protects cohabitation.
I see. Let's get to Rich in Durban. Rich? How are you?
To me, yes. To me, once you regulate, the consequences of regulation are such that when these cases go to court, even if it's just cohabitation via an agreement, once they go to court, the interpretation, the way the courts look at it, in effect, it turns out the outcomes turn out to be equivalent of a marriage. I've seen some in the media. I've seen some outcomes where it kind of you start to think that okay, this is not a marriage per se, but the way the judgments go by, it kind of makes it look like a marriage.
We get you.
That's the first part. The second one, I wanted to ask your guest about what if you cohabitate and one of the parties in the cohabitation agreement has a child, and then they decide to adopt the child. What is the effect of it, if at all, and also how does it affect the other biological parent that is not party to the agreement?
Okay, thank you, Rich. Thank you, Rich. Can I preamble that by also stating that Angie is not a family lawyer or advocate? But I mean, Angie, you can share your perspective from experience, maybe.
But The first part of it is at the court judgments lately that was in the press. A domestic living together is cohabitation. There's no law that says it's a marriage. So if a partner passes away and they want to inherit, you need to go to court for a declaratory order. Let the court declare it that you are a civil partnership and that you are entitled to inherit your share of the deceased estate if you don't have a will. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is family law gets regulated under a separate legislation. So, for instance, cohabitation is recognized under family law. Domestic Violence Act also recognizes cohabitating partners. And then obviously, in terms of the Maintenance Act, both parties, whether you are married, whether you are cohabitating, you are both responsible for maintenance of a child.
Yeah. And I would venture to guess that if you've adopted a child and there's been agreement between the birth parents and the adopted step parent, you assume by adopting a child, you essentially are saying to the law, I am becoming the person responsible for this child in every instance. You wouldn't now go unadopt a child just because you've decided to come out of the romantic situation. You're still a parent with responsibilities to that child.
Absolutely, because remember there's a birth certificate and then you get your adoption certificate.
Yeah.
So you are legally responsible for that little human being.
Absolutely.
Because you've adopted them as your own child.
Yeah.
So it's the same with parents that get divorced. Just because you get divorced doesn't mean you don't need to look after your child anymore.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick pause here. We'll come back on the other side and just continue for a few more minutes. Anonymous, I see you. We'll come back to you. Let's just get to Medupi with the headline news.
Thanks, Bridge, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the DA has argued in the electoral court in Joburg that President Cyril Ramaphosa created an uneven playing field at the polls after addressing the nation ahead of the elections during his May 26th address. Corruption-accused ANC MP Zizi Kodwa has resigned as a member of parliament, and the Israeli military says it has recovered the bodies of 5 more Israelis who had been held in Gaza. A full news update coming up at 3.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We are in conversation with Angie Poole, who's the Manager of States of Business Restructuring at BDO South Africa. And we're looking at the law and what the law says if you are in a cohabitation situation. Anonymous, how are you? Let's go to you quickly before we wrap up our conversation. How are you? Anonymous?
Can you hear me, Bridget?
Yes, now I can. Go ahead.
How are you? And
I'm great.
Thanks to your guest as well.
We're good.
Mine is just a quick one. We are talking about cohabitation. In a situation where one is paid lobola and they've had a wedding, but the wedding is not registered. Would that also fall within the scope of cohabitation? By not registered, I mean it's not registered with the Home Affairs. Is that cohabitation?
Angie?
No, you've paid your lobola, so it's will fall under the administration also of Deceased Estates Act. Remember, there is legislation that regulates those types of marriages.
I would even...
So that falls under separate legislation completely.
I would even take it one step further, Anonymous, and point you to our podcast from last year. We ran about 3 separate series of conversations with family law advocates, advocates who specialize in family law. And for 2 of those series, we touched quite deeply on what constitutes a customary marriage by the South African law, the different rites of ceremony that need to have happened in the sequence that they need to have happened in order for such marriages to be recognized as marriage and binding. But also we touched on, conversely, in the instance, for instance, of polygamy, where there is isitembu, and there is a marriage by way of the Western way, and then a secondary marriage by way of the customary way, and what the rights and responsibilities. So it might heed you to go. If you remember it, Anonymous, then you remember all three of those lawyers. What did they say to you?
Thank you so much.
They said, Anonymous, they said you must run to Home Affairs. Even if you have not had the white wedding, run to Home Affairs and go sign that piece of paper, Anonymous.
Absolutely. Register it as a civil union with the Home Affairs.
Because that's the missing link, right, Angie? Just as we wrap it up, a lot of our folks we know will sort of do the customary stuff and then maybe plan for the white wedding a year later or 2 years later, but they've started a whole life together and the paperwork is missing, which means there's still that missing link that creates problems for people like yourself somewhere down the line.
Absolutely, especially when there are minor children involved, where there are assets involved, it becomes quite complicated to actually distinguish, who is wife, the correct wife in terms of a customary marriage and who's not. Because you always get the chances as well.
Absolutely. Angie Paul, thank you so much for the time. And Angie is manager estates and business restructuring at BDO South Africa. Anonymous, run to our podcast. They're still up. You can still find them. And if you do, we reiterate this from time to time, that if you do find yourself where ulobolile, incwadi hambile, but now you're waiting to do the white wedding, in the interim, they all agree. They may disagree on the nitty-gritties of each case, but the interpretation of law, but what they agree on is that in the interim, run to Home Affairs. Don't walk. Run to Home Affairs and go sign your marriage certificate on a random day that says you are married. And then you can wait to do the rest somewhere down the line. Let's take a quick pause and then we'll come back. Lebuyem is in the building.
S3 is bringing you the best in Indian cinema every Sunday at 2 p.m. Laugh, dance, get drawn into the drama, revved up with the action, and maybe, just maybe, shed a little tear. Catch Gagi on the 7th of July. Selfie on the 14th, Prince on the 21st, and Laila Majnu on the 28th. It's Indian cinema like you've never seen it before. Channel your best entertainment with Indian cinema only on S3. Open up.
S3. Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
From 1952 in Helsinki to 1996 in Atlanta, Penny Haynes makes history 44 years later. The sensational swimmer ended the long wait with victory in the women's 100-meter breaststroke.
Haynes tried to hold Beard off again. She did it in the 100. Can she do it in the 200?
Champions always want more, especially at the Olympic Games. Haynes was not content with just one gold. She scooped the second in the women's 200-meter breaststroke in a brand new Olympic record.
Haynes will win gold for the second time in Olympic record time.
Magical moments of the Olympic Games. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
Arts, culture, and robust conversations with Bridget Masinga.
arrive on the planet and blinking step into the sun. There's more to be seen than can never be seen, more to do than can never be done. Some say eat or be eaten, some say live and let live. But all are agree as they join the stampede, you should never take more than you give in the circle of life. It's the wheel of fortune, it's the leap of faith, it's the band of
I mean, every millennial right now in the car with their kids just broke in chorus. It's the circle of life. We grew up on Lion King. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. We're joined in studio by the living icon himself, a music producer, composer, writer, multifaceted individual. Lebu M joins us. Happy birthday, or should I say belated happy birthday to you.
All the above is fine. Thank you.
60 years old.
That's what they said.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Don't feel it at all.
Nah.
Nah. Let's reflect back on 6 decades of life. I mean, you've had an incredible life.
Thank you.
Why are you seemingly shy now? Let's reflect
I'm
back
thrown off.
Why?
In my entire career,
Yes.
especially in South Africa, I've never actually started an interview that starts with the editorial John version of Circle of Life. More higher, have you no shame?
Right? You know what? I said
Come
to you
on.
off air, I was like,
I get off air guy, boy.
the
I'm in
ladies-
South Africa, the whole world starts my interview. And it's going here I have to come in
you see
start
those
my interview.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eyes behind the screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I should throw them in the
Yeah.
bus so I can
You
relax a little bit. It doesn't make any damn sense.
You should. It's those 5 eyes behind the screens.
Where?
There.
No.
I was here with you.
I'm kidding.
I was here
I'm
with
kidding,
you.
but it's like,
Yes.
it's like I'm thrown off.
Skis.
I was kind of skis.
Okay,
Fire somebody.
I can't fire anybody. I don't have the powers to fire and hire,
I'll fire
unfortunately.
myself. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding, but it threw me off.
Okay, let's reflect back on 6 decades of incredible life, because you have had a wonderful journey. As you sort of stand here now, looking back at everything, I mean, in your words, what a life.
What a life. I'm truly blessed.
Yeah.
Very grateful. And I think the last couple of weeks before and after my birthday, I've been thrown into a very reflective mode, which is not my nature.
Really?
No, it's not my nature. My nature is finish this job, I'm out, on to the next one. But I'm truly now very humbled by the journey. And I'm trying to be very conscious, because I'm doing a lot of interviews, which I'm not really good at.
Really?
30, 40 years in this business. I'm trying now, especially considering what you just asked me, to figure out how to create a balance, airing what a wonderful life, yet it's not been a easy journey to get to where we are professionally, because a larger part of it is quite a journey of struggle, fights, a lot of money spent with lawyers. You know, the simple saying is hard to get on top and harder to stay on top.
Yeah.
The more you progress in your career, especially in this sort of, how do I say, specialized field. I mean, specialized as in, first, I'm a black South African. Secondly, my career path is not the norm. It's not hip-hop, it's not R&B, it's not jazz. And my career is film and theater in a very unusual, for a black producer, let alone a composer. So I found myself the last 48 hours kind of reflecting on that, because most of the interviews I've been doing are reflective of the great journey to the Grammys, to the premieres. But I'm feeling like, but that's not the story, especially in my home country. You know, the story is how hard it was to get there and how harder it is to stay there. So maybe I'm kind of like mentally conscious and trying to change the narrative of the interviews I do because of that. Because you asked me a really brilliant question I was not expecting. Yeah.
Okay, well then let's get into it because, you know, I was going to reflect back to a 16-year-old Lebu leaving home, going to exile. That in itself, as a 16-year-old, in my mind, by any standards, you know, you're young, you're a child, you need nurturing, you need family. But when you juxtapose it also to the context of what was going on, your 16 and my 16 are different
2
16s.
different worlds, huh?
Yeah. 16 at you know, at the height of apartheid required you to move almost, it stole your youth, essentially. No?
I'm thinking. You got your second question or comment is like, whoa. I, once again, like how you phrase it, so I must be careful and be clear how I answer it. I'm born into the apartheid system.
Yeah.
And the journey to 16, both as a black South African and as a career, doesn't start there. In 1976, June 16, 1976 happens, I'm 13. And at that time, as a young black boy in Soweto, Kutladi, the system, you're not expected to be anybody, just to summarize it. You know, you're expected to just grow up, go work at somebody's house as a gardener or somebody's office, not even as a PA or secretary, but, you know, the rest is documented in history. So that context of the beginning and the foundation of my journey is not at 16. 16 is when I leave the country. But the average 13-year-old, 14-year-old in the early 70s was already living and growing up in an environment where ordinarily you are actually 27.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when I enter the field of my love is before age 10. As a ballroom dancer, I become a youth club kid. Yeah. So as we're doing my biography now, my argument with my biographer is, no, my career started when I got to LA. She said, no, your career starts when you're 14 years old, being the youngest nightclub singer at the Pelican in Soweto. And that's 2 years before I leave the country at age 16. So the context around that, I'm beginning to be conscious of now.
You see, and this is why it's important to get to these ages of 16, right? Because then...
I thought you were going to say it's important to get to the ages of 60. I'm still trying to confirm
60,
that.
Yeah, 60 was actually
fair.
what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Because then you do sort of this retrospective cataloging of your life. And even you yourself begin to, I don't know from what I'm hearing, begin to awaken or be conscientized to things that maybe you weren't aware of, you know, that were transpiring at the time. It's setups that were happening at the time.
Absolutely.
And even disruptions that altered your trajectory at the time because you were just living in the moment.
Absolutely. Like everybody else,
Yeah. It is the voice of Lebu M. He joins me in studio. He just turned 60. We invited him to come through and have a conversation with us as we mark this moment and, of course, commemorated 30 years of the iconic contribution that you've had to this great film. But let's also, whilst we're still there at sort of young Lebu, let's talk about what that does, you know, when you transition from 14, here you are in these spaces that were quite familiar to a lot of black creative children at the time, you know, community halls, dance halls, following passion, talent, all of this sensory awakening. 2 years later, you find yourself having to make the decision to go to exile, which I wonder at that time, did you see it as a sacrifice and leaving behind of what you would have foreseen as your future, or envisioned as your future as a 14-year-old?
I come from a generation that didn't look at or even conceive the thought that I'm sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm born and raised less than 15 minutes away from Naledi, where Tsietsi Mashinini and the youth of that day, or that era, embarked on this journey that changed the rest of history into 1994. So I doubt very much that era of youth, which I'm part of at that time, and the families and the immediate and extended families were about, let's have a meeting. We're going to leave tomorrow and we're going to do... It is a mindset that came from, at least for my generation, from the Black consciousness movement that was led by Tsietsi Mashinini and Steve Biko, because the elder generation were obviously exiled as your ANC and your PAC. So I think the mindset that was fast embedded in us as young people from the community was about first self-identity and self-assertiveness, whether within the structure of the family or externally, but I think most of it was more external. That's in the streets, your friends in school, me being a youth club. It was more than ballroom dance, more than tennis. So the sensories that you're talking about, when I look at my children now, look at this generation, I feel sad for them because they don't have what I had, which is the advantage of your physical body, your mind, engaged with sensories that are now engaging with you from a instrument or a phone, or so you don't have that human interaction that allowed us to figure out who we are first and figure out if you're going to be a soccer player, going to be a politician, or you're going to be in entertainment business. So I knew at age 9, before age 10, that I'm going to be in entertainment.
Yeah. Then we fast forward, because now, we only got a few minutes. So then we fast forward to what we perceive, but I don't know from your lens, we perceive it as the seminal moment in your career 30 years ago. This incredible thing is birthed that no one foresaw would be here 30 years later.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you also, from your lived experience, was that the professional marker that forever changed the trajectory of Lebu M, the composer, the musician, and the contribution you've had in the space?
No question about it. In every shape I'm trying to imagine the next 30 years or the next 60 years of my professional life and the next 60 years of my personal life as I grow, and trying to imagine what else could be bigger from a global impact. So far, nothing. We just celebrated 30 years of the Lion King film. In a couple of months, we're celebrating 25 years of the second Broadway production. And with the Broadway productions, we have over 14 productions running concurrently around the world, all centered around one theme. The theme is a storyline, a great film, great animation, great everything, but the spirit of it driven by the music that is essentially a team of a South African young kid named Lebu M, a German guy, Hans Zimmer, 2 British guys, Elton John and Tim Rice, create and design this great soundtrack. But what history has come to determine and prove is that the South Africanness and the essence of the work I did, and with many others, became the spirit and the energy that drives the soundtrack. That has now even a bigger impact on all our Broadway productions. I'm not sure even when I go around the world now, we're touring a lot with Hans, doing arena tours and all kinds of. I mean, we have 3 properties literally concurrently, all starting with Nancy Ngonyama.
Wow.
Around the world for almost 30 years now. And we've got the Broadway productions, which is second to the movies.
Mm.
We have a series of movies with the 2019 movie The Lion King. And we have the most successful film score arena tour with myself and Hans in history.
Mm.
So these 3 platforms have put African content inspired by South African spirit, energy, lyrics, melodies at the highest levels of any entertainment field in the world. So I don't think about those things. I don't reflect on those things until literally last month or so.
Until you start writing the memoirs. Then you got to reflect on those things.
Yeah.
Which then I sort of wonder, when one speaks to, musicians per se who've had the breakout mega hit, the seminal iconic song, people will equate it to chasing the high. Everything that comes after is chasing the shadow, the ghost of that thing. As much as you say the next 30, you can't envision it right now, obviously. But throughout this lifespan, has there ever been a sense of then chasing the next thing that's going to outdo this machine? Or because you are so in the production of The Lion King with everything that's going on around it and all the different brands and titles, that there's been no time to pursue the next thing because we've been growing this beast?
I think very conclusively the advantage of being in this specialized film and theater and now arena from my young adult now, where my professional career evolves out of Los Angeles. What I learned from day one, which I think in retrospect comes from when I was 14 and what I was learning from the grades of that time that I was a kid working with, is first, this is work.
Yeah.
Now, and to your question specifically, it never, ever, ever became a chasing the next hit.
Yeah.
Because I'm inspired by, moved by the project I'm working on now. So Lion King is the most successful. I've done maybe 12 to 16 movies. Before Lion King, I did some songs and wrote and produced songs for The Woman King. And there's a lot of activity and a lot of movies that are happening in between. And, none of it can ever be looked at by someone like me from gotta make the next hit.
Yeah.
Because it's about what you bring to the table that's unique and that's authentic. Fortunately, because we bring authenticity of who we are as South Africans and African artists, I'm trained in making sure when I walk into the room and I leave a wow. Not because it's a hit, because very few of the projects I work with are exclusively me. It's a collaboration of directors, producers, and many other elements that don't put me in that box of I gotta have the next hit record, And then of course the storyline and the theme of whatever project I'm working on, you work specifically on the basis of that theme, that thread. You write, whether it's for orchestra, for that specific scene. You can't be thinking of a hit when you are writing about a scene where, it's unrelated to commercial success. So I think there's a huge advantage which allowed me to be more creative with very unlimited scope. Because then if I was not in that frame of mind, my creativity and what I bring to the table will be limited to a hit record or a hit movie or a hit anything. So I feel very much advantage with it.
Yeah. In our last sort of minute and a half, because now we sort of in this reflecting mode, I then wonder if you had to sort of sit back and write the preamble to your 14-year-old self?
It's a setup. I feel a setup, but let me listen. Yeah.
No, I just wonder.
Yeah.
You know, what would be that opening paragraph for that piece of information that you would share?
I honestly, genuinely wish I had the opportunity to even reflect on that. Because as I enter my 60th year of being alive, celebrating the Lion King, the last year and a half have been spent composing and being a collaborator in the biggest of the franchise, Mufasa, which comes out December 20th.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about that is one doesn't have a second to think because you have a new stress. It's the first time I wrote the first 5 minutes of music that goes into that movie, that starts the movie, which means 30 years later, for the first time you enter a movie related to the Lion King franchise, in this case, Mufasa, you don't hear Nancy Ngonyama.
Yeah.
You know, so there's no time to think about any of that. In fact, the biographer has to go through so much to sit me down. And in the process that we're in now, it's very difficult for me and the biographer to start from there because there's always so much activity happening. But in a nutshell, if I was forced with a gun in my head to reflect on that, the first thought that comes to mind is I'm grateful and blessed to have been born in that era and not now.
Oh, you see, when he writes that in the book, you guys must credit me in the back page at the end. It's like, thanks to Bridget Masinga for helping us be in this quiet 20 minutes of time to just talk about that. Thank you so much for sort of, for confirming our date and accepting our invite and coming through. And we're going to leave it there today. And then when Mufasa comes out, because I've got the VHS tapes of Lion King, I know all the lyrics and every single piece of dialogue. When Mufasa comes, I'm not going to ask you to come in studio because I know you'll be busy, but I will place the call.
And this is home. I probably want to be here first before anyone in the world.
There we go.
As long as you don't start with the Elton John version.
We'll start with the new version. This time I'll be in charge of the song. We'll start with the new version of the opening 5 minutes of Mufasa.
It's been a privilege. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming through. That was Levu M joining us. And that's how we wrap up this afternoon. John Gereke has been walking up and down, disrupting all my shots. So I figure he is standing by for the National Pulse. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again tomorrow.
The top stories at 3. The DA continues arguments in Ramaphosa's address, and Zizi Kodwa resigns from Parliament. A very good afternoon. The DA has argued in the Electoral Court in Joburg that President Cyril Ramaphosa created an uneven playing field at the elections after addressing the nation on May 26th ahead of the polls. The party submitted that Ramaphosa violated the Electoral Act and the Electoral Code of Conduct in doing so. The former opposition says the president abused his status as the head of state and public funds to influence the election outcomes. The DA's legal counsel, Advocate Anthony Steyn, says the argument that the president is not bound by this code is untenable.
The code is binding from the date on which the election is called to the